MMA live for Lock Live right here at Awesemo.com. That is not the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. He's got some family obligations. So Josh joining me here on this Saturday afternoon, early Saturday afternoon for MMA. We're not, typically it's a little later on in the day. We got to get used to this because next week, Live for Lock is at 9 a.m. East Coast time.
That's a fun one. I'm jealous of that one quite a bit. Yeah, I'm not much of a fighter. I am, let's say 1-0-1 in my fighting career. The first one was the 5th grade. That was a victory. Took a little bit of time off. I was like Brian Ortega. I got out of there for a couple years. We'll give it a no decision in college. I was not involved in the loss. Let's just put it that way.
Of course, we are here to talk about today's UFC Fight Island number 6. I love this main event of the Korean Zombie and Brian Ortega. Obviously, when you talk about the notes of the weigh-ins, the big note is Brian Ortega shaving off the hair to make weight. He's apparently going to donate his hair, for the love of, I believe it's Love of Locks. I want to say it's called
Locks of Love, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I know my wife has done it back in the day. But yeah, so obviously when you have to cut your hair to make weight, that's a little concerning there. But I'm all in on this main event, and I mean, look, I think this top to bottom is a very good card. But Josh, we got to tell the people about a new content that we have over at Awesemo.com for our premium subscribers. The MMA Express Pass, which includes our rankings. We go in there and we rank them. This one was 1 to 22. Number 1 was easy for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for you. But kind of once I started kind of getting down, because obviously there's certain fighters I really love on this card. Chan Sung Jung is someone. Jung Young Park, because he's going to take John Phillips to take down City, plain and simple. I like Matchroom Grisham. But then after that, it was kind of like, Jimmy Crute, you got to put up there because obviously if he's going to win, it's going to come in the first round.
For sure.
But, tell me a little bit about how you put your ranks together because I know I sat there last night and put mine together.
Yeah, so I've got it up on the screen right now. New tool for us, UFC Pro Plays. So it's Alex, obviously, Awesemo himself, Jason and Pete, myself, and then DeColts, Steve Buzzard, who we just brought on fairly recently. And we rank everybody from top to bottom, 1 through, in this case, 22. You get everybody's individual ranking. You get an average of it. You get to see where these people rank from their ownership perspective. For me, for those of you that don't normally watch anything that I do, very data-driven. So I am running simulations in Excel. And so the order of the guys that show up here for me are how often I think that person will be in the optimal. So I think that Chan Sung Jung will be in the optimal more than anybody else. I think Crute is 2nd. I think Park is 3rd. I think Grisham is 4th. So you're going to see a lot of the higher salary guys show up closer to the top because they are more likely to win and thus more likely to be in the optimal lineup. What these rankings are going to be great for is the 2v2s or the 1v1s that you start putting together where you have $8,800 left. You need to figure out who you want to put in there. Well, you come here and it's like, well, Chan Sung Jung's 8,600, Jessica Andrade 8,400, Chan Sung Jung ranks a little bit higher. Those guys, Jung will take the Korean Zombie will take the coin flip. Obviously, like the guys that are least likely to win are going to show up at the bottom. But what you're trying to do is separate these guys into tiers. It's really hard to compare Jimmy Crute and John Phillips because there's $1,600 separating them on DraftKings. You just need to compare guys in their salary tier. This tool should help that out a ton.
Yeah, I do that on a NASCAR show where we break it down in 4 tiers, all based on then kind of, like tier 4 is basically the punt plays. And so people can check that out. Of course, Alex wanted to put together a subscription plan for everyone that want to go out there. We do it for the NFL Express Pass. So we now have an MMA Express Pass. $2.95 for this Express Weekly Pass. It includes our pro plays that we've been talking about, ownership rankings, and that lineup builder. These are tools I use every day in terms of building my lineup. So great offer we have over there at Awesemo.com. So you got to take advantage of that now. Of course, as we head into UFC 254 next week, but also here for today. You mentioned about your simulations, and I saw it when you put in Slack earlier this week. I was like, ooh, that caught my eye. I'm about to bring this up on Saturday. Like, in terms of my favorite punt play is Modestas Bukauskas. You are not in on this trade.
No, I am not. And it's not, you guys are going to get a very different experience today than you normally get. Pete, much more likely to break this down from an actual fighter's perspective, with skill and all that. I don't know nearly as much as Pete does about the MMA game. I am simply just a nerd. So quite the opposite. So apparently Siri thought I was talking.
That has happened to me plenty of times.
That's a new one for me, honestly. That doesn't happen all that often. Basically, and this sort of goes back to what I was saying about the pro plays. I have to compare all these guys or girls to people in their salary range. And right now, Bukowskis is coming up as a relatively neutral play to me. And I have one or two plays at the bottom that I think are going under owned. So sort of all of my exposure gets concentrated to those 2 or 3 decent plays, and it pulls everybody out of the lower tier. So instead of being like a little bit spread out to the $700 to $7,500 range, I'm more focused on, in this case, 4 of the 6 fighters. I don't have Bukowskis or Antigulov at all today. So, spoiler alert, when they win, you know how I'm doing. Good luck, because I am the jinx when it comes to this stuff.
If Antigulov wins, he will be absolutely the optimal lineup, and there may only be one lineup that has him in it. I'm not expecting it all for him to get the win. Modestas, I mean, look, he's got to keep the fight on the feet. There's no doubt about that. Jimmy Crute is what a lot of people would probably describe as a one-round fighter. The big news with him this week, he comes out and talks about how he doesn't like paying bills and rent. So he lives in his van outside of his gym with his dog, which to me raises so many questions. But look, he's a GPP play. I think this is a fight that I love it for GPP. Cash, I'm not huge on this fight because, look, the winner I think is going to have on DK 100, 110, maybe 120 points, where a loser's going to have like 5 or 10. I mean, it's boom or bust in terms of here. I just think that if you're looking for a punt play that has a good chance to get 100 points, Modestas is someone that I do like in that spot, but I do have Jim Crute in lineups. I mean, look, if he wins, he's going to win in the first round. So he's going to get you massive amount of points. So it was something that I stick there. I know you got up on the screen right now that people can see. One of the ones that you have low there also, Syed Nurmagomedov. Yeah, I'm not high on him either. I don't like that price point.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big price point. I really think it's a big price point on FanDuel. I think on FanDuel, if you are taking him, the hope is that he's just going to score massive amounts of takedowns. But man, the price point scares me off him.
Yeah, 9,200, the biggest price tag on the card for DraftKings. The problem is Grisham and Crute are right there and significantly more likely to finish in an optimal lineup, in my opinion. Monstrously larger projections from Alex. Grisham at 85.2, Crute 84.1. Gigantic step down to Nurmagomedov. I think it's fine to get to someone like Nurmagomedov in a cash game, but for him to pay off, not only does he need to win and win in impressive fashion, he also has to then beat Grisham and Crute, or those guys are going to show up in an optimal because they're cheaper. That is a really, really difficult recipe. So for right now, we have him projected for 27% ownership. I have him in one lineup of 150. He's in he wins 78% of the time based on the betting odds.
Yeah.
But when he wins, he's only in the optimal 25% of the time. That is a really tiny number for the guy that is, in theory, the biggest favorite on the card.
Yeah, if you want to see those odds, just go to awesemo.com, odds shopper right there. Check out all the odds. As I mentioned, every time I do these shows, the one prop bets I love to look at is fight goes to decision. I know it was earlier this week. That was the fight that had the highest fight to go to decision prop. So it's just not a fight. I mean, as much as I talk about how I hate playing the first fight of the night because I feel like I can never get that fight right in terms of DFS.
Sure.
It's just the price point. I don't like it. I mean, look, Mark Striegel at 7,000. I mean, look, in terms of roster construction on FanDuel at $9, he makes roster construction real easy if you want to put him in.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, I'm putting him in. This one is the trickiest one for me. I'm trying to avoid getting too much. On my original crunches, you can see on the screen right now in the highlighted column, so column H, I have 36% I had to bring that down quite a bit manually. He was the guy that has been the linchpin. I even did a little tape watching. I went, checked out some highlights on YouTube just to see what my chances are. He seems mean. I like it. He's got some. He's ready to strangle someone for sure.
Yeah. One of the things we always like to talk about here is best plays on DK under 8,000. So we're in that 7,000 range. As I look at through here, I mean, I mentioned about Mma Dfs. Claudio Silva 7,700 is a little interesting. I like James Krause to win the fight, but he's one that's interesting to me. Polyana, I mean, look, armbar from guard, it's women's MMA. It can happen. Even though I do have a good amount of Julian Robertson. I kind of have a feeling Malarkey Zaim's going to end up being optimal just because of the price point. But what's your take on the best plays under 8K?
Yeah, so Claudio Silva's an interesting one. A couple hours ago, I had a lot more, and our ownership projections on him went up quite a bit. And now I see him as one of my least favorite plays given the current ownership. I don't have anybody too crazy in this area, nobody more than a third of my lineups. This will not be a popular opinion. I am quite a bit over the field on Caitlin Chukagian. As I mentioned before, Mark Striegel, another guy that I'm quite a bit over on. But I'm not taking any major stands. The bigger stands that I'm taking are not having a lot of Claudio Silva, not having a lot of Brian Ortega. Those are the two big. It's more so fading this area than any heavy stands, which in my opinion is sort of how it should be in this area. These guys are less likely to win. So I don't want to put all of my eggs into an underdog's basket. I'd rather cast a little bit wider of a net down here. It's easier to fully get away from someone than to want to go to like 75% of a $7,500 fighter.
When I see Caitlin Chukagian, DFS, I immediately just want to grab my black Sharpie and just put a line through it.
Yep.
I mean, she is just not a great DFS. Now, this is interesting because it's at 125. So Andrade now at 125. We know she's fought at 35. She's got a huge, I want to say it's a 6-inch reach disadvantage in this fight. So, but, Jessica Andrade, she's a bull. She's going to come forward. If I think she will try to get this fight to the ground. I do not see her submitting Caitlin Chukagian. I mean, look, Chukagian could just make this a range fight, piece her apart. And I know you kind of, in our Slack channel, you mentioned this earlier this week, like 71 points. I think that's a realistic number in a Caitlin Chukagian win here.
Yeah, so much of it has to do with scoring. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need everybody to go out there and score 120. I mean, there are cards where that happens, where there are so many high scores that you don't really have a choice. But in this case, like the 20th percentile outcome for Caitlin Chukagian when she wins the fight was like 78 fantasy points. That's still putting her in an optimal at one of the lowest possible scores that she's going to put up in those scenarios. So that's why I'm a little bit more interested. I think she gets into the optimal like 24% of the time, something in that neighborhood. And I don't think that the ownership is backing that up. She's currently at 20%, whereas we see Claudio Silva 34%. I mean, we're talking about close to double the ownership at $100 cheaper. I will always just want to have that flip-flopped in a GPP. Yeah. Ortega's a little bit different. He's at 30% ownership. He also gets the benefit of the 5-round fight. So while I'm not as excited for it, or for him, I have a lot more Chan Sung Jung. Ortega's ownership makes more sense because he has the ability to accrue.
My thing about Ortega is because this is a man that has changed up essentially his entire coaching staff with the exception of one. Henner Gracie is the only coach that has remained on his coaching staff since his last fight 22 months ago against Max Holloway, and we saw what happened in that fight. So kind of you really don't know what to expect out of Brian Ortega in this one. I mean, could he come back as a completely different fighter? I mean, the fact is that Brian Ortega is not the guy that comes in this car with the biggest layoff. It's actually Thomas Almeida. But to me, with Ortega, it's just what to expect with him. I really do like the zombie in the spot. I think it's a nice price. I like both sides of this one. I think Ortega's in a good spot. I always talk about this. I hate how FanDuel prices the main event because you get no discount for taking the underdog in the main event, right. $19 for him. So that to me is like I like the Ortega thought of going there. I think that's something you definitely do have to consider there. Andrade, I mean, whether she pays off that price or not, who knows? But of course, you mentioned about ownership rankings. If you do want to get a hold of those, all you got to do is sign up for Awesemo Plus subscription right now. Weekly pass $29.95. If you just want an MMA weekly pass, it's $8.95. All you got to do is go to awesemo.com. Right there, top left-hand side of the screen, it says Awesemo Plus. You can sign up for it and get you ready for all this MMA action that we got coming up here tonight. Ownership is obviously a big thing, but that top fighters tool, that to me is the one piece of premium content I'm always looking at, especially that percentage to be in the top 6 is what I really look at in that top fighters tool.
The first thing, other than grabbing the salaries file from either DraftKings or FanDuel, pasting in the top fighters tool is the first thing that I do when I'm trying to go through a card. It's everything that I want. It's every piece of information that I could possibly want in one table. And you can get it into a spreadsheet if you want, or just look at it on the website. It's a button click away. You can't beat it.
And of course, we have that membership that gives you access to our Slack channel where myself and Josh will both be in there tonight, chatting away with various things happening on in this card. And so we, obviously we're here to try to help you guys make some money tonight. FanDuel under $15. So you mentioned Chukagian at $15. We mentioned about how popular Claudio Silva is at $13. Outside of that, man, it's all you're taking chances. I mean, you're just taking chances when you're this low on FanDuel.
What was the threshold? 15? I want to make sure I sort this correctly.
15 under.
But bouncing around between different tabs here. Hopping over to FanDuel now. Oh man, it's a really unappealing section. Malarkey, though, the guy that I would have my eye on the most, and I have quite a bit on DraftKings as well. I think $15 is probably a buck or two too cheap. Like him in the MVP spot if you're trying to get super sneaky. I think he's under-owned there. But definitely the guy that I have most under-owned in the area of $15 or below. Silva, again, the ownership has climbed throughout this day that he went from someone that I expected to have in a lot of my lineups to someone that I'm going to have relatively minimally. I like him more in the MVP spot than I do in the utility spot. I think he's going a little over-owned there. 34% ownership. That is the highest number of anybody $15 or below by a full 10%. It's not like there are other people around him. There is a giant gap between Claudio Silva, everybody else. And I get it. $13 is a pretty tasty salary for someone with a 42% chance to pick up a victory.
Yeah, when you look on FanDuel, the MVP spot, I mean, look, everyone's going to be on Zombie, Ortega, Grisham. My kind of sneaky MVP is Thomas Almeida.
I feel
like
I'm holding the mantle for Pete here. That is the fight that I am terrified about. That's the 82,800 or 8,000 fight on DK. I'm right there. I don't want any part of it. I don't know what side to take. It feels like a total coin flip to me.
Yeah, we were talking about before the show. Like, to me, Almeida is a GPP play. Martinez is a cash play.
Yeah. Man, it's... it feels like May 29th, 2016. That's how long it's been since Cody knocked him out.
He was the favorite in that one too. I mean, think about this. Like,
he was Cody before Cody.
The fact is, and now both of them, everyone questions their chin. Yeah. It is. But it's a fight that I'm going to take a chance on. I don't have a lot of Jonathan Martinez in GPP. I think if Martinez does get a stoppage, I think it's late second, early third round.
I have a very tiny amount of both of these guys right now. 4% Almeida, 11% Martinez. It is the fight that I have faded the most. And that is not because I don't like it. I think both guys are super live to be in optimal lineups. The problem is they're so close that it's hard for me to make any distinction. Whereas every other fight, I think that there's either a major ownership disparity or just a guy in particular that I think is at the wrong price. These guys are so set up perfectly from a price perspective, and their ownership is slightly higher than I want, that I just can't get there. And that's not fun, because I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Almeida went out there and looked like the prospect he was supposed to be 4 years ago.
And now he's speaking like perfect English.
I saw that too. It makes for a
Man,
good
it's
interview, I guess, now.
yeah, no, that definitely does help out there. But of course, we're going to get into listener questions here. You can leave those in Slack. Those do take premium over there, so put those over there. Also on YouTube, and you better hit that like button, or Josh is going to start coming for you.
Yeah,
I know how Josh gets.
We have 250 people in here and only 50 likes. Again, if you guys don't normally watch something that I am doing, that is an unacceptable amount of likes. That number needs to be triple digits. It should just happen already. We're bringing you guys the goods. We're taking you guys all the way up till right around lock. We got another show coming up after this, but I like shaming the rest of my fellow workers with likes. And if you want to go to our...
I've been there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun knowing that you get them all. So today seems like the perfect day to hit that thumbs up.
Yeah, I've been there. Following you after a show, and I'm like, oh man, this a-hole. I'm like, oh,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Most surprising ownership. I will tell you, I thought the ownership of Andrade was the most surprising for me.
Fourth highest right now. Higher than I would I don't want to say that it's higher than I would expect. Root is probably the one that I think is higher than it should be. 45%, second most owned on the slate. I don't see a lot that separates Crute, Park, and Grisham. And for Crute to take like the quarter step ahead is a little surprising. Not that I don't think that it should be 20 or something crazy, but if that were like 38, I think it looks a lot different. But at 45, 45 is a big number to be not in the title fight.
Park is my most confident play.
It was earlier. That ownership came up, unfortunately, but I'm a big fan.
Well, John Phillips can't stop a takedown. I mean, literally, he Park should take him to takedown city. I mean, there is no reason to stand with the guy that used to have the nickname the White Mike Tyson. He's a striker. He's got a puncher's chance. But look, you're fighting John Phillips. You just take him to the ground. Guy can't stop a takedown. Like even when he rocked Jack Marshman was able to get a takedown. He might have been concussed.
I don't think that Phillips has much of a chance in this from everything that I've looked through, which is usually a sign that I'm going to get the wrong guy here and Phillips runs through him somehow, because I feel like I haven't hit a correct like favorite that I'm on in a while. Last week's card was, I mean, I was dead in 2 fights. 2 strong stances on underdogs, game over, and I was just done and dusted. Rough run for MMA.
I think last week I had a bad week in terms of my lineups. I think I didn't even look. Couldn't go on FanDuel because we know what's going on there.
Did they pay out yet?
I didn't even look at my DraftKings because I was like, there is no reason for me to look. I looked the next day, just see how bad it was.
I didn't even really need to look. How bad was it? It was.
Yeah, I didn't need to. Like I just. But look, it's the thing that makes MMA DFS so hard, and Pete talks about this all the time. It's one punch, one takedown, and it completely changes everything. I do believe MMA DFS is one of the hardest DFS sites.
Oh, it is. We were talking a little bit about it before the show started. Even so, the biggest underdog on the card today in terms of odds of winning the fight, Regal is 22%. That's 1 in 5. I mean, that is like if there are 5 fights with these sort of odds, and there are, work your way down from Phillips down. There's 5 fighters there. One of those fighters is going to win. Odds say like the most likely scenario is one of those fighters win. 2 of those fighters are pretty likely to win. And figuring that out is terrifying because when you look at them, you think, oh, these people are all going to get trucked. That's why they're facing better competition. That's why the line looks like it is. That's where the math comes into play. Like these guys are way more live than what you normally think. I mean, let's just talk John Phillips for a second. Let's say that these numbers are 100% accurate and he is 29% likely to win this fight. Think about that in terms of baseball. That's a 290 hitter. If I'm asking you, will so-and-so get a hit? That's the same odds. You don't ever see somebody go up to the plate like this guy has 0 chance to get a hit. It's like, no, he's going to get a hit in like a third of his plate appearances. John Phillips is going to win this fight like a third of the time. And that is really hard to wrap your head around.
He has to keep it on the feet, plain and simple. He has to keep it on the feet. Someone asked me who my favorite MVP at FanDuel is. It is a zombie. That is my favorite over there. But I mean, look, he's going to be everybody else's favorite MVP pick. So I will tell you that MVPs. I mentioned about I have one. I have a lineup with Almeida. I've got one with Park. I've got one with Grisham, and I think I did put one with Ortega.
I would say I'm with you. Korean Zombie is the quote unquote best MVP, the highest likelihood of success. I think he's probably like if you're trying to win on FanDuel with minimal duplication, he's probably the worst MVP. The guy that I would be looking to most would be Park. He's the guy that has the biggest gap between where he shows up in my sim, where the ownership shows up. And that's the big piece of all of this. Just because Korean Zombie has the best chance of being the MVP, he's also not in the optimal lineup 87% of the time from an MVP perspective. We already have him owned 21%. That's a big number. You are more likely to win money by not having him in a GP, even though he's the most likely guy to do it.
Yeah. Justin asks, Park, Kraus, or drop to Silva and leave the salary. This is DraftKings GPP. I would prefer Park and Kraus.
Park, Kraus, or drop to who?
Or go Claudio Silva.
Which site? No site.
DK.
Kidding. Oh, okay.
The more I've thought about this Kraus Silva matchup is I just look at the fight IQ of James Kraus, and I don't see him getting submitted. I just don't. And that would be Silva's path to victory in terms of a stoppage.
I mean, if we're just picking between these people, I think Park is the answer. If this is a large field GPP, I'm trying to get kind of away from Claudio Silva. Not that doesn't win this fight 42% of the time, but I would just go to Park there. The significantly higher odds of being in an optimal. So if we're not paying attention to like ownership or anything like that.
Yeah. By the way, people asking where Pete is. He's got a family event today, so he could not be here. He will be back with me next Saturday. So we'll get you ready.
I took him out. Couldn't handle the heavyweight. I'm not a heavyweight. I'm 205.
Yeah.
I can cut the middleweight if I need to.
Yeah, we're working on getting Pete to fight, so hopefully that's going to happen here soon.
I'll be so awesome.
Someone says, is Phillips going to be able to stay down or bounce back up? He typically does not get back up.
No. I hope that he does not get back up. I can't even say that because I do have a decent amount of Phillips. It's so interesting because, like, if you know Phillips wins, what you want to happen in the following 7 fights is different than if Park wins. Because once you bank that 7K guy, then you start to cheer for favorites. If you don't have that banked underdog yet, then you're cheering for underdogs later on. So, let's say Phillips wins by knockout, just like making up a random outcome, I'm going to be cheering for the 8K, like the high 8K guys, more often throughout the rest of the fight because I already have the Phillips win, quote unquote, locked down.
If John Phillips wins, there's no reason for me to check my lineups.
That's how I feel about Nurmagomedov and Antigulov. If either one of those two guys wins, well, Antigulov in particular. If Antigulov wins, I'm going to go ahead and pack it in pretty early.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. By the way, Greg checking in over on Slack. He says, somewhat of a hot take. Agree or disagree? Ortega has never won a round in the UFC other than the rounds he's gotten a stoppage in.
Okay, so I pulled this up before, but we got off of Ortega, so I didn't keep going. What is Brian Ortega's best win? Would you say that is knocking out Frankie Edgar or subbing Cub Swan?
Frankie.
Is knocking...
It's the way he did it.
Is knocking out Frankie Edgar in 2018 like a head you want to display?
it's not the way I thought. I like what Greg is saying. When you look at his wins, like, so you look at the Clay Guida win, arguably losing in the first 2 rounds. You look at the McConnell win, arguably losing the first 2 rounds. I mean, he does find himself in these situations where he is such a slow starter. I think my concern with Ortega is if he cannot make this a jiu-jitsu match, can he beat Zombie on the feet? And I really struggle to say yes.
And if it's a jiu-jitsu match, is that a huge issue for Zombie?
Never been submitted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to immediately assume that a guy that could land a twister is going to just be in trouble suddenly. Not that that's like some barrier of entry to jiu-jitsu or something, but or how he pulled it off. But I don't, and I'm happy that he has taken off as much time as he did. We look at someone like Anthony Smith, who got absolutely brutalized and, in my opinion, came back quicker than he should have. Ortega took the time off of just an absolutely terrifying beating. You don't see many fights like that in the UFC where someone is beaten so bad for so long in a fight. I mean, you think back to Diego Sanchez getting just absolutely pummeled. And you see this. It's like these guys need to take that time. So it makes me wonder, is this a good thing for Ortega being out for so long? I don't know. I look back and I think, like, okay,
it could be good.
Positive steroid test, bunch of wins against meh. Maybe he was never as good as it seems. We'll find out a lot tonight.
It's interesting to me that Dana went on record this week saying the winner is next for Volkanovski, or appears to be next, which I get from the Zombies perspective. I don't get it from the Ortega perspective.
The only reason that I get it from the Ortega perspective is because it's not Max. Because obviously they're not giving him Max again that quickly if it's still Max at the top.
I know this. The Calvin Kattar camp wants that Holloway fight. And all signs would point to that's probably the route the UFC is going. And they're also very open to coaching the Ultimate Fighter against Max.
So you're thinking Volkanovski versus the winner of this fight, Kattar Max, and not Max Volk 2?
It doesn't sound like that's what Volkanovski wants. They're going to do Yair versus Zabit. They're going to try to run that one again.
Yeah.
So if they truly I think Zombie wins tonight, he will get the next shot. I really do.
But the problem is 100%.
That,
I don't think he's going to be taking any military leave again.
No, he's.
And I don't know why I said
military
Max
service
Volk 2. I meant.
Yeah, it is 3.
Yeah.
I thought Max won the second one.
Same. I don't think that's like a minority opinion either. At least I don't know. What did the media say? It was like 2-1, right?
Yeah, I want to say majority of people were on Holloway, winning that over at MMADecisions.com is where to go to. Someone asked about. I know while you're looking that up. Yeah, you look at it. I guess it was a little more than I thought.
No, well, the first fight was clear Volkanovski. The second one is probably 2-1 Holloway to Volkanovski.
Yeah,
and 48-47 on both sides. There's no one getting that additional round. I mean, I don't think that it's up for debate that they're the two best featherweights on the planet.
Oh no, I'm with you on that one. Someone asked about our best value play on DK. We kind of went over that a little bit. When you talk value play, to me, it's under 8,000. Zion might be who I look at there, just in terms of the potential value that he could bring with a win. Someone asked about stacking the main event in cash. I'm not a stacking in MMA kind of player.
Same. Especially for this fight, where I think that either one of these guys could pick up a finish, and I wouldn't be like super surprised about it. It's not. I don't get the sense that I would be stacking this fight in cash. It's also a lot easier to stack a fight in cash when it's like 9K, 7K, 86 and 76. Like you need a little bit more out of Ortega in that case, and It wouldn't be my first thought. I would have to run some additional crunches and look at the data to see where the ownership is actually coming in. But I think that you can build a non-stacked cash lineup today.
Yeah. Of course, so we mentioned earlier on the show about a brand new package we have over Awesemo.com. Our MMA Weekly Express Pass for only $2.95 gives you access to our pro plays. That's myself, Alex, Josh, Pete, and Steve as we put together our rankings for the plays. You get ownership rankings, lineup builder, $2.95 for a weekly pass. You got to take advantage of that one and get you ready, just not just for tonight, but see some of all the content we have coming for you next week. I know Josh is working on some things for next week, so you got to look forward to that. And I will tell you, I always mention about how add Fantasy Cruncher to your account, and Josh has some great videos that it's on other sports, but it can relate to MMA as well. How to use Fantasy Cruncher can really kind of help you out and get those get the best out of your optimizer. As I know that's kind of the way I learned about Fantasy Cruncher, is just watching Josh's videos.
It's an invaluable tool to me. I've basically been using Fantasy Cruncher since the day it came out. I can still picture Dave posting on the DFS Sports subreddit, and I was just like, yeah, I would love to check out this thing. This is an optimizer, and yeah, it's cool. So I've been using it for as long as I can remember now. It's got to be like either late 2016, early 2017, something in that neighborhood. So I've been around the block with it. I try to do as much content as I can with it because it's the thing that I use the most. If it wasn't for Fantasy Cruncher, everything that I did in DFS would be significantly different. So I couldn't be happier to have that we have a partnership with them. I try to do as many videos and explanations as I can. We do office hours, so we take questions from our premium subs. I do a lot of screen sharing and videos during that as well. So sign up, use the MMA Express package. Come join in office hours. I've got one, what's today? Saturday? I've got one Mondays and Thursdays. Come tune in. We could talk some Fantasy Cruncher.
Well, and as I always say, like in terms of our premium Slack, just mention me so I know I see it. That's about the best way. So I know it's there. Just mention me and I'll see it, whether it's in the MMA or, baseball, office hours, all of it put right in there. Joe says FanDuel GPP, Park or Gamrot. So I was thinking about Gamrot this week, and I kind of just want to see how he performs in the UFC before I go all in on him. I'm all in on Park on this one, so that would be the way I would go. Especially the takedown, especially when we're talking about FanDuel, because of the points you can get with the takedowns and things along those lines. To me, I prefer Park over Gamrot.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the same boat here. I would say that I think that Park on FanDuel is the best fighter, given the current ownership, of anyone that you can roster. So Park would be my pick there.
Will Park go for takedown game or stay high volume kickboxing? He better go for takedowns. If his corner is not imploring him to go for takedowns, they need to be fired.
Yes, 100%. Need that big time.
Does not take a rocket scientist to figure out how you come up with a game plan against John Phillips.
Nope.
Benny says, is I am good for cash? I would say so.
Let me hop back over to DK. Probably not enough ownership for me. So we're talking 7,900. I would be more in that area. I would be more likely to go up to Almeida, or I would spend $200 less and go to like Claudio Silva.
Yeah. By the way, for the person who says Park doesn't go for takedowns, you might want to go look at his last fight.
Yeah.
He had 5 of them. He will go for the takedown. Let's see here. Thoughts on Martinez? Kind of mentioned this earlier. I think if he's going to get a stoppage win, I think it's going to come later in the fight. It's just kind of the way he fights. He's not that quick ending type fighter. I would imagine the Factory X team, he's coached by Mark Montoya, is going to basically tell him, let's not get into a firefight because that's what Tom Almeida wants.
It's the fight that I find the scariest. The problem in it is that okay, so I have more Martinez than I have Almeida. That is an ownership decision only. I think that Almeida is the better option if you're simply picking between the two. Um, it's the fight that I have the least amount of exposure to, so I don't want to give anybody any real takes because I am underweight on both guys. And by the way, I don't think,
Yeah.
at least from a YouTube chat perspective, I don't think that we should be answering a single question until we can get that like number north of 100. 89 is, God, you guys, you got to be better. Got to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from though on Almeida and Martinez. I get it. It's a fight where, I mean, yeah, if it's 2016, you're like, give me all Thomas Almeida all day long. Unfortunately, it's 2020.
Life has been a little different for him over the past 4 years. Not a positive experience in the octagon for all intents and purposes.
No.
Other than an Albert Morales TKO just after the Cody loss, but you know, he's fought twice. I mean, he hasn't fought in 2+ years. Last 2 fights were losses.
33 months.
He could look good. I mean, there's a reason he was, you know, one of the it prospects 4 years ago. It didn't go well for him. Does that mean that it's over? I mean, how old is he?
Late 20s, probably.
20. So he's 29. I mean, there's nothing to stop him from moving forward. It's all about what kind of work he's been doing in the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am a little bit of a believer in ring rust. I do think that is a real thing. But having that much of a layoff for the position he's been in, I don't think that's a bad thing, though. You know, like you mentioned about it, you know, with Brian Ortega in terms of what is. I know I'm not sure if we mentioned here on the show, but I know we mentioned it right before the show was Mark Striegel. You mentioned about how you were getting a lot of him, and I mentioned if you do want to take a flyer on him, especially on the FanDuel side, at $9, you can pretty much then get whoever you want.
I like him on both sites pretty aggressively. I have a lot just on DraftKings at 7K. And it's kind of twofold. One, I think that he's going under-owned. If he really ends up being 12% ownership or having 12% ownership, I think that's too low of a number just simply given the potential outcomes in a fight. Two, I think that Nurmagomedov is also going slightly over-owned. So these two things are working hand in hand and bringing Striegel up a little bit. Nurmagomedov is also bringing him up because I'm naturally getting the opposite side of that fight. So that's one of the main underdogs that I'm going to. So much so that like I mentioned before, I even started looking at some film and watching some highlights. It reminded me of like Team Alpha Male 6 years ago, where you just constantly saw people strangling other people. He looked like he was trying to rip the head off of multiple people in the cage. Not saying that that's going to happen, but he's going to go for a finish. It didn't look like he had any, I'm going to let this one go for 15 minutes in him.
Over is Slack asking if I would stack the main event. The answer is no. I get, if I were going to stack it, it would be on DraftKings, not FanDuel.
Yeah, it is not something that I did. So that's really the only answer that I can give you. I would not be stacking the main event.
Like, to me, stacking MMA is only if it's like an 8-9 fight card.
Yeah. If this, that's even 10, I'm not so mad about it given these two guys and like the likely finish rates. I don't think that you need that sort of differentiation, and you need a very specific outcome in that, because not only do you need like Ortega, you probably need Chan Sung Jung to win the fight and Brian Ortega to be in it with volume for most of the time, maybe get a knockdown, a couple takedowns. But you then also need Ortega to beat Chookagian, Silva, Botello, and Phillips basically in that range. That's what makes it a little bit more difficult for me, because I don't think that that's as likely.
MK over in Slack asks Gamrot or Grisham, FanDuel, GPP. Give me Grisham. Gamrot's probably a decision win. Could have a lot of takedowns, though. Grisham, to me, has got first round knockout written all over it.
I have Grisham slightly ahead in MVP odds, slightly ahead in utility odds. They're not separated by all that much from a utility ownership perspective. I don't mind going to Gamrot in the MVP spot because I think that there's a little bit of ownership disparity there. But if we're just talking about generic utility options, Grisham would be the preference for me.
Yeah. Andy asking about favorite MVP. We kind of talked about this earlier. Chan Sung Jung's going to be a popular one. You look at other ones I think you should be considering. Jimmy Crute, Park, Grisham would be kind of my top ones to look at.
They are the 4 guys that showed up in the MVP spot in my Sims more than 10%. So you nailed it. I don't have anybody else to really add.
Let's see here.
Did we get up and over 100 yet? Can I stop yelling?
We did get over that. Yes.
122. I appreciate it.
This is interesting. Jimmy Crute or Maxim Grisham. That's an issue. I feel more comfortable going Maxim Grisham than I do Jim Crute. The concern I have with Jim Crute is what happens if he can't get the stoppage in the first round. Does he have the gas tank from minute 6 on?
Man, this one's a tough one. I do not have either of their opponents in a single of my 150 lineups, so I'm very much just in on Grisham and Crute. I have slightly more Grisham, mostly because Crute is picking up a little bit more ownership. I do have Crute slightly more likely to be in the optimal, but not as much of a disparity. I think if you're playing a larger field GPP, I think you're better off going to Grisham. I think you'll just be duped slightly less. If ownership isn't that big of a deal to you, I would have Crute by a hair.
This is one that I know no one's asked, and it's fighters that are separated by $100. James Krause and Jessica Andrade.
Ooh.
Like, I would prefer James Krause.
It's amazing that the public won't prefer that. Jessica Andrade right now 39% owned on DraftKings. James Krause 26%. I'm very anxious to see how valid those numbers are, because if they are, I think it's Krause by a landslide because of that ownership.
I don't like the co-main event in terms of DFS. I just don't.
I mean, I don't like the co-main event, but it doesn't have anything to do with DFS. I liked it when it was a different co-main event like 4 days ago.
Yes, Cyril Gagne would have been the highest owned fighter.
Yeah.
Not a doubt in my mind.
I'm sure I would have.
He just would have been hard to get to on. Out. Yeah. Because at FanDuel at $23, I was like, oh man, God, I hate when we have these $23 of fighters that I really want. Yeah. But I would definitely go Krause. Who is the Chase Claypool of this MMA slate? Yeah, if you had Chase Claypool last week, man, kudos to you for taking that one, man. Oof.
I mean, I guess it's like, to me, it's Striegel. That's like the guy that no one's going to be playing at the bottom of a salary tier that I'm hoping scores whatever 3 metaphorical touchdowns are in MMA.
It would be him or Antigulov to me.
I don't want it to be Antigulov, so that's why I'm not going to answer that. I don't want to put that answer out into the atmosphere and then lose 57% of my lineups.
This is a popular question we get, and it's a great one for you to talk about, is how much money to leave on the table for GPPs. I always say, don't feel like you have to spend every dollar you have. But, I think it all depends on the slate. I mean, there's times where I put a contest together, I put a line together, and all of a sudden I've got like $4,000 or $5,000 left over.
Yeah. I just switched back to the screen share. The table in the center is the amount of lineups I have at every salary tier. So 42 lineups at the full 50K, 36 at 49.9, 31 at 49.8. So a large majority coming in with not a lot on the table. But I did leave $300 on the table 19 times, $400 10 times. I've got one at 48.7, so I had no problem leaving $1,300 on the table twice. More often than not, I'm going to be spending a lot of my salary, but I don't think that it's particularly particularly necessary, particularly in MMA where you have, I mean, in theory, the optimal can be the 6 lowest guys in salary. It can be 7, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. Those 6 people can win and have the 6 highest scores of the slate. It's not likely, but there's nothing to stop that from happening.
Yeah, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had a slate with, I want to say 3 or 4 fighters under 8K.
Yeah.
All got stoppage wins.
Yeah. So if you can get that sort of value, there's no problem with it. There's a difference between how likely something is to happen and how much you'll benefit from it if it does. It might not be likely, but if no one else is doing it, you could be open to bigger prize pools. Whereas the most likely scenario in a GPP is not something you want to have because you're going to end up chopping it with 140 people. There's a middle ground there to be found. So in this case, for today's slate, I don't mind leaving 1,300 on the table. There are probably some other lineups right on the cusp of being in my 150 that are 48.6, 48.5. I don't mind it at all. Not in MMA.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the first fight of the night of Nurmagomedov and Striegel. If either one of those guys win by stoppage, they're going to be, that's going to be an optimal lineup in my mind. Because when I look at the 9,000 fighters, Nurmagomedov is the low end of that, of who I want. I think maybe I've got 10% of him. I don't have much Striegel at all.
I hope you're wrong. But if he wins if he finishes this fight, the chances of him being in the optimal are very, very high.
Yeah. Someone asked about who he thinks is going to score the most points. I mean, look, it's the easy pick is to say Chan Sung Jung because of the 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot give another answer that is more likely than him. He might not be the majority, but I don't think that it's possible to give an answer that is not the Korean Zombie. If you're looking for an answer that is not the Korean Zombie, based on Alex's projections, that is either Grisham or Kroot. Probably a coin flip there. But Korean Zombie is essentially the answer if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I mean, Ortega got hit 280 times in his last fight. I'm not saying that Zombie's going to land 280. But let's say he lands 175, and even if it's a decision win, that's going to be a massive score.
Yeah,
massive score.
He could get hit 100 less times, and that's still monstrous for Korean Zombie.
Okay, I love this question, Slack. Pick one, Antigulov or Striegel,
right.
Or do I start over? I'd say start over.
I would say pick Striegel.
Well, we know where you're coming from. We know but for me, yeah, just start over. Just start over.
Although, to be fair, I see you asking that question. So just legalize. Let me know what you do so I can do the opposite.
Someone asked the thoughts on a Boatello upset. Can't rule out armbar from guard.
Yeah.
It's women's MMA. I expect Julian Robertson to win that fight. But in terms of if I was going to put a percentage on it, 30% chance.
Yeah. I have 27% right now. That's part of the range of. So for the 7K people, Striegel, Utilitadze, am I saying that right? Close enough. 24%.
Sure, that sounds right.
Phillips 22, Botello 27. Those are the 4 that I'm going to. So, a quarter of my lineups I'm rotating through 4 separate people. Best I could do.
Yeah,
right
someone
now.
asked about. Yes, yeah. Someone asked about playing Botello in cash. Not opposed to it.
You have Ortega and Silva right above for essentially the same salary and twice as much public ownership and significantly more likely of being in an optimal lineup. So I would draw a line through. I wouldn't take anyone below Ortega in cash today if I could help it.
Yeah. By the way, should mention that for everyone looking for NFL coverage, of course, got a ton of NFL coverage all weekend for you. Today's premium content over the site is NFL ranking, so you got to check out that. Trey's got a single entry question, top 2 or 3 for single entry. For me, it was Park and the Zombie was my top 2 for single entry.
Um,
And building from there.
I would say, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of money to play with if your first 2 in are Zombie and Park. They are 2 of my top 3. I have Crute by a hair over Park, but you also save that extra $200. So in that regard, yeah, give me Zombie and Park as well. That opens you up to some of the higher end 7K options, so you don't have to go total dumpster diving.
Yeah, Jay asks Robertson and Kraus or Andrade and Park. Oh, I'd probably slide to Robertson and Kraus.
Robertson, Kraus, Andrade, and Park. I want to know. Probably Park and Andrade. I think that Andrade and Robertson are in a pretty similar boat of being like mildly overowned. And at that point, I would just rather have Park than Kraus.
Yeah.
That one's really tight though.
Yeah. Someone asked if Grisham is a must play. I hate to be overweight on it, but if I'm going to be overweight on a fight, he would be one that I would be.
Second most exposed fighter for me on DraftKings. I don't think that, like in theory, the only person that is a must play would be Korean Zombie, and I still have some Ortega. There are no must plays in MMA.
Like I'll say this. I think in terms of fights that you have to look at in GPP, I look at obviously the main event.
Yeah.
I look at Crute, Modestas, and Park Phillips would be kind of the fights I would look at and say you got to play them.
I'm trying to see which ones have the highest total of odds of being in. I mean, like Mma Malarkey, I think is going to be a very sneaky fight in the long run. I'm overweight on both, and I know that goes against your credo of that is the first fight, correct? Does Alex have this?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I know that it goes against your credo a little bit. I think that fight is very important to final lineups because of their salaries. Not fun. It's certainly not going to be. No matter what happens in that fight, I'm going to be mad because either Malarkey win. What the most likely scenario, because I'm doing it, is that this fight is a snooze and both of them are terrible, and I have 73% of my lineups in the toilet. I'll take any finish I can get there.
By the way, coming up here right after us will be MLB Live Before Lock. As a Rays fan, I kind of just foresee what's about to happen.
Not good. Not good. It would be really nice karma for the Astros, though, to blow this after the gigantic comeback.
Oh, man. Dude, oh, God. Yeah. That was tough to watch last night.
Go Braves. That's the best I could do right now.
Yeah. Zombie or Grisham at MVP? I would. It's more of an ownership play for me. Zombie's going to be so popular at MVP. So I might lean towards Grisham.
I have Zombie in the MVP spot optimally 13% of the time. Grisham 10%. But Korean Zombie is owned 21% there. Grisham only 9.8%. So depending on the style of contest, Grisham I think is the better play from a GPP perspective.
Antigulov has had 27 pro fights.
Okay.
He is only made out of the first round 3 times.
Well, if I'm being perfectly honest, I hope that he does not make it out of the first round today. And in particular, I hope that he is finished at the 4-minute and 59-second mark so that Grisham can accumulate as many points as possible.
I hate the 10-second knockout in DFS. I hate it.
The worst thing in the world is the knockout in the first 10 seconds of the second round.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I mean, you're happy, but you're like, oh, do you realize what would have happened if you did that just a little bit ago?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. 459 is your favorite number.
Yeah.
Favorite number in MMA FS. So yeah. Of course, the fights are going to start here in 25 minutes. They'll be over on ESPN Plus. We're going to get out of here. Let the MLB guys get in here to get you ready for tonight's MLB action. As always, we appreciate you tuning in here to MMA Live Before Lock. Pee-wee back with me on Wednesday night for UFC 254. We'll get you ready for Khabib and Gaethje. And I have a feeling I might be overweight on Justin Gaethje on DraftKings next week. Just saying.
That is going to be
but yeah, looking forward to that.
Incredible fight.
It's what happens if Gaethje can keep it on the feet. That to me is what makes that fight so intriguing.
He might not have to keep it on the feet. First time he hits him, he could just separate him from his soul if he needs to. I'm so excited. It's such a fun fight.
Man. So
that's as good as
I hope everyone has a fun Saturday night, fun time watching the fights tonight. We'll be over in Slack, so be sure to check out that. So that is going to do it for this edition of MLB Live Before Lock right here on Awesemo.com.